Welcome to Racing Roundtable on America's Horse Racing Network, TVG. I'm Todd Schrupp. How to describe Racing Roundtable? Well, maybe the best way to get into that definition is to start with a question, because this show is about you, the TVG viewer, the industry stakeholder, as it were. And our first question this evening comes from Robert in Florida. What do you really think you're going to accomplish in this half-hour segment? We are all stakeholders in the industry of thoroughbred racing, but the only way we're going to move this industry forward is if we talk, if we communicate. So what Racing Roundtable allows you to do is bring up your questions and find out more about the industry and why certain decisions are made. We'll have a topic each week, and from there, you will take us to what we're going to accomplish. The topic this evening is TVG programming. So naturally, we have some of the executives here at TVG to join us on the set to answer your questions, starting with our Chief Executive Officer, Stephen Byrne. We also have with us our Senior Vice President of TVG, Tony Olivato, and a face you have not seen before, but we probably should see more of because maybe more people would tune into TVG. That would be Melanie Frank. She is Associate General Counsel here at TVG. That is legalese speak for she's a lawyer. She can explain some of those decisions, why we have certain track partners, why we don't have certain exclusive track partners. Those questions are all fair game. 2 weeks ago, we asked you to send in questions about TVG programming. We were inundated with questions. You are going to see some of the best that we have selected for the show, but we still want your input. So you can call into the show tonight, 877-855-2884. There is no topic that is off limits. It's all related to TVG program. We have also gone out to the racetrack to talk to fans about TVG programming, and we get our first question there.
Rodriguez from Anaheim, California, and I was wondering when TVG would come out with a high definition for its TV channel so we can get some really nice quality on the TV.
That's great that LeBron James watches TVG as well, like the jersey there. But Stephen, you were the one who helped put together a partnership that is designed to bring high-definition television coverage to thoroughbred racing. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, can I get to that in a second? I have a question for you.
No, my boss.
I think, and maybe you do too, that there's a niche market out there that's going to find me just as attractive, if not more so, than Melanie Frank. And there's got to be somebody out there that thinks I've got a face for television.
Here's the niche mark for Melanie Frank, and that is it's very large. Yours is a very,
listen, at my age and at my shape, I'll take any niche that's going. I tell you, if you're out there, come find me.
And niche does Great Britain mean non-existent?
This is what it's like to work at TVG, but what about HD? It's on everyone's mind.
Well, wouldn't Melanie look great in HD, I have to say. On the HD side of things, what we're trying to do really is to work with a kind of coalition of the willing if we can. When I came to America, I had no idea what the difference was between HD and standard definition, because in Europe, there isn't that much difference. But frankly, when I got a big TV, sat at home, and I could finally afford one and turn TVG on, I was mildly ashamed of what we were putting out there. The pictures weren't that clear. You could hardly make out the race numbers on the saddle cloths. We've got an audience out there as a demographic that some of them are slightly older, and I think one or two of them are going to struggle to see some of the picture quality that we've got. And it's just time. There's 34, I think, sports networks out there. 32 of them are in HD, 2 of them aren't, and we're one of them, and the other's the other racing channel. That's not a really good selling point, I think, for the racing industry. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of investment. We're prepared to make it if the racing industry's prepared to work with us.
But could you put a time frame on it? I mean, how soon could this happen? How long will it take?
We hope and think, Tony's a better man than me to go into the detail, but we're hoping if we can work with the distributors, with the cable companies and that sort of thing, that we should be ready for the summer of 2012, and with luck, we'll start with the Del Mar meet and take it from there.
Stephen's absolutely right. I am a better man than him.
Let's get to a serious question for Tony Olivato. This was sent in, and this comes from Pat and Jim in Tampa, Florida. We are extremely disappointed in your decision to not show Tampa Bay Downs on your television coverage as you have in the past. What's up with this year?
Well, we're disappointed that Tampa Bay is not on TVG as well. Tampa's a track that we took a lot of pride in, airing their races. We started showing Tampa, I believe, 4 or 5 years ago, and the results have been really remarkable for the track. Their handle's gone up fourfold, and they've had the most success that they've ever had as a racetrack. Unfortunately, during that amount of time, the rate that they've charged us is essentially tripled or quadrupled. And this year we went to them and just asked them to enter in the same type of deal that we're offering to other racetracks. They said they didn't want to do it, and we've gone a different direction.
Is there any hope that they would be back this year?
I mean, there's always a chance, but I think right now we're pretty settled in on the lineup that we have, and we've got tracks like Oaklawn and Aqueduct, and those tracks are doing well. But I mean, there's always an opportunity.
I'm glad you brought up Oaklawn, because Aaron in New Jersey brought up the fact that he's very excited that Oaklawn Park is back on our lineup. That was not the case in previous years. So Aaron wants to say, we love Oaklawn racing. Thanks for bringing it back on TVG. So Melody, part of his question there is, where was Oaklawn in the previous years?
Well, like Tony said, we're really happy to have Oaklawn now. In the past years, we would have liked to have Oaklawn then as well, but Oaklawn was involved in a contractual relationship with another entity, that would be HRTV, and in that instance, we weren't able to take Oaklawn. Their agreement expired, and we've been able to do a deal with them now, and we're happy to have them on our network. So thanks, Aaron.
And business-wise, what have you seen, Oaklawn in the past when they weren't part of our television coverage versus Oaklawn now getting the full resources of TVG?
Well, it's been interesting, but it kind of goes to the heart, really, of our business model, and I think it's important for customers out there to understand as well. As far as Tampa is concerned, for example, we're not looking for anything more from Tampa than they were paying effectively last year, or the deal that we had with them last year. It's not a cent or a dime more. But those guys didn't want to they wanted to put their price up, and rather than work with us, they chose to go a different route, and that's perfectly fine. On the wagering side, it's hurt us. About 54% less wagering we're doing on Tampa now than we did this time last year, but also I think the other ADWs are probably doing a little less wagering than they might have been as well. And we're looking to grow our business. The encouraging thing for us is our customers have moved to bet on other things. So Oaklawn is new to us. The TVG wagering on Oaklawn is about 4 times bigger than it was this time last year when they weren't on the network. So we're learning all the time, and it looks to us like the network makes a difference. We think about 44%, something like that, of our wagering dollars is driven by what's shown on TVG. So obviously we'd like to put as much programming and content out there as we possibly can, but it has to be the right model that works for the long-term industry of us, for the long-term industry, for the long-term well-being of the fan, and also for the racing industry. It's a little balance that you've got to get, and we didn't strike it with
Let's talk more about the business, how TVG makes money in this industry, and that ties into our next question from a fan at the track.
Tommy from Pasadena, and my question is about the fee, the wager fee for each wager. So that's my question, and I just wanted to know why, what is that for, and does that fee cover?
As long as there has been a TVG, that has been something that always seems to be brought up.
I think it's a good question, and it's something that we should do something about. If we want to position ourselves as being a fan-friendly network and a fan-friendly betting company, then I think that wagering fee has to go. But it's important for customers to remember, if you're a viewer of TVG, you're not really a customer of it necessarily. We only make money from people who wager with TVG. We don't sell very much advertising on the network, and if you're paying to a cable company or whatever, we don't get anything from that. That goes straight to the cable companies, and we need to look for ways to try and drive our business. Betting revenue is obviously one way. The wagering was another, but I don't think it feels right to me to expect customers to pay 25 cents on every bet that they have. I know some people waive them right now, but we don't also charge deposit fees. If you put money in through credit cards or debit cards, we take that hit. We don't expect the customer to. I think there's a balance between debit cards and credit card fees and wagering fees. We need to get the balance right, and I don't think we've got it right now.
So between the way that you're dealing with your track partners and also how customers may be charged, it sounds like the business model in your mind is evolving year after year as the market changes.
Yeah, I mean, we've had the business, as Betfair, we bought TVG 2 or 3 years ago. What we have to do is try and find a way that obviously gives us long-term sustainability. We want to invest in television. We want to be here in American horse racing, but the model's got to work, and we've got to do something that puts the customer first and foremost. But for us, the customers are the racing tracks, and they're the horsemen, and they're also our viewers and punters who are out there that want a fair deal. I don't think we're giving them the best deal possible, but I think we'll do our darndest this year to make sure that we start to do that.
Our next question comes from a TVG customer. That is Eric, and Eric points out other sites offer streaming video at no extra cost. Any plans to match that business model? We do have, obviously, our executives here on the set, but we made our entire staff available to answer any question this evening. And now we get the answer to this question from Eric from Don Scott, who is TVG's Vice President of Marketing.
That's a good question, Eric. I'm asked that quite a lot. When it comes to our streaming fees, if our members bet just an average amount per month, then those type of fees are actually waived. Keep in mind that with our broadband technology, we stream at a very high frequency. That being said, we incur a lot of hard costs. What we don't want to do is pass these along to our customers. Therefore, we try to offset them as much as possible. If our customers are actually wagering with us, we are more than happy to take on and absorb those costs. But if our customers are not, then we have to pass some of those small costs along. Thank you for your question.
Stephen, it's just my suggestion, but I think Don needs a new office. I think all that equipment is getting in the way for Don Scott there. We have another question from a TVG viewer, a person who can't be an account holder, but we have a lot of people who watch in states where they can have accounts, but are wondering about our lineup, and that is Jerry in Texas. He wants to know, why did you drop Mountaineer? And Melanie, that's more of a question for you as I hear the phone ringing here, but we'll get to that call in just a moment. Why did TVG drop Mountaineer?
Well, I think the answer to why did we drop Mountaineer is the fact that we actually did not drop Mountaineer. We are currently still taking wagers on Mountaineer. I think what the viewer may be asking is why we're no longer showing Mountaineer races on our television network. And we're no longer showing those races because Mountaineer decided not to take an offer that we presented to them to have their races aired. That same offer was offered to other track partners, and they've elected to take that, and so therefore we've changed our lineup. There's only so much airtime that we can allot, and in this instance, Mountaineer didn't elect to enter into agreement with us.
I think it's important to mention, though, that a track like Melanie alluded to, that tracks that have replaced other tracks in the lineup. Charlestown is a track that has kind of filled the void of Mountaineer not being on our TV lineup, and it's interesting to note that Charleston just issued a press release a couple weeks ago saying that they had a record year last year, and it was the first year of them being showcased on TVG. So we like to think that we, in some small way, played a part in that.
We do have someone on the phone. Charles from New Jersey joins us on Racing Roundtable. Charles, thank you for watching. Thank you for calling in. What's your question about TVG's programming?
Hi, Todd. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Thanks for having me. My question is, you know, as a horse player, I go with maybe 100 or so per track, you know, per day. And I wanted to know if you can hold your men accountable. Maybe we could see exactly what they're betting and what they're bringing home each day. You know what I mean? Because the pick 4 and the pick 5 and the pick 3, that I play that when I'm ahead, you know. We're trying to make money, you know, get ahead, nickels and diming them, exactas, you know, check marks and stuff like that. So I really would like to know how your players are doing week to week. That's all.
Charles, it's a question that comes up quite a bit. It's the ROI, or return on investment. So the people who are on air giving out their selections, where do they stand at the end of the year? Where do they stand week to week?
That's why one of the most common questions I get is, why don't we keep track of our announcers' picks? And it's, you know, it's pretty simple. You know, I asked Simon Bray today, what's the most number of races you've ever had to make picks for in one day? And he said 48. Well, I would, you know, ask any viewer out there if you could find anybody in the country that's having to handicap 48 races in one day and make picks for all those races and show a positive ROI, then I'd bring them to TVG, we'll hire them. And I think, you know, the point is that our viewers want picks for every race. So we're kind of forcing our announcers to make picks for every race. It's impossible for them to show a possible ROI. And hopefully our viewers out there will have certain announcers that they want their opinion, some they don't. They'll latch onto those people and pick their spots.
Again, we are taking your phone calls throughout the show, 877-855-2884 if you want to be part of Racing Roundtable. We now go back out to the racetrack for our next question.
Hi, my name's Erica, and I'm from Nebraska. I watch TVG all the time, but I wonder why I can't bet in Nebraska on TVG.
Speaking of frequent questions, because as we said, there are more states that we can operate in versus states that we are allowed to operate in. Even got this question from Ernie in Dallas as well. So what about this, Melanie? Why can't they bet Nebraska as an example?
Yeah, that is a very frequent question. I think the issue is we're shown in various states, and people like Ernie in Texas, and the Nebraska question is, well, I can see it, why can't I bet on it? Well, the answer to that is that we adhere to what government regulators have imposed as far as racing, and it's not legal to take advanced deposit wagering in Nebraska or Texas, and we have a very conservative approach to that, and so we adhere to that. And there may be other companies and other ADW companies, advanced deposit wagering that is, that will allow their customers to take wagering, and we just choose not to. And Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Melanie, but I think it's probably important to point out that you know, there is some dissent and disagreement as to legality or otherwise. We stay on one side of the fence because we're hyper-conservative. We don't want to put our shovel where there's no muck as far as the regulators are concerned. We want to be in states that want to have us there and they welcome the activity. You know, I respect the other operators. They're doing what they think is best for their business, but we take what's called a de minimis risk. We're not prepared to take the same risks that some of the other ADWs are. We'd like to be in the other states, but until we can work with a regulator and be properly embraced in those states, we tend to stay away.
And similarly, like Iowa is an instance where we weren't taking wagers before, and in upcoming spring of this year we will be, because the regulations have changed there. So in that instance, we think that our approach is the way to go.
Yeah, the markets are without a doubt evolving here in America for horse racing, and TVG will be there when we're allowed to be there. Back to parimutuel risks, and that would be from Glenn in Kentucky. He writes, why all the emphasis on pick fours and pick sixes? Tony?
Another good question. You know, when we first launched TVG, we tried to follow the viewing patterns and betting patterns of our customers and the people that were watching TVG. And what we found is that the people who watch TVG watch for over 2 hours at a time, which is really remarkable for any TV network. At that time, we were owned by TV Guide Network, which their average view time was about 4 minutes. So we said, well, what bet would encompass a couple hours? And we said, well, the pick four. So we latched onto the pick four, and we started offering that as a bet that would really engage our audience and get them to watch for a period of 2 hours. And certain tracks, Los Alamitos is a good example of a track that then focused on the pick four, put in a guarantee on the pick four, and if you look at the results, they've been amazing. Los Alamitos, when we first started TVG, was handling, I think, around $11,000 per pick four, and now they're regularly over $100,000 on their pick four. So the pick four has been a huge success story. The pick six, on the other hand, is a bet that we don't really focus on unless there's a carryover. And when we do focus on it, because of the carryover, it's because there's a lot of attention that's going on it. So if there's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million being bet into a pick six, I think obviously as a TV network we have to cover that, because that's what people are playing and that's what people want to know about.
Here's my favorite question of the evening, because I've asked this as well, and that is, why are there not higher limits on talent tickets? Maybe $100 on pick fours, $250 on pick sixes. Michael sent that question in, but you could have easily added my name to that.
I actually think that question did come from Todd. If it was up to Todd Schrupp, just so everybody knows out there, the limit for announcers would be like $1,000 on a 50-cent pick four. It's very simple. What we have found is that the average TVG customer will bet anywhere from $24 to $40 on a multi-race wager. So if we know that, and if we know that they'll bet, say, $60 on a pick six ticket, why in the world would we have our announcers putting out $250, $300 tickets? There's no chance that any viewer watching at home is going to click on that ticket and play that ticket. It becomes meaningless. We try to give people tickets that are affordable and that they could play.
Let's go back to the phone calls. Frank in Washington joins us now on Racing Roundtable. Frank, thank you for calling in.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. Todd, I'd like to ask you and the panel, do you have a target date or an exact date? It's a two-part question. When you're going to implement the exchange wagering, and also, say if you want to back the favorite or, you know, play against the favorite, will there be a better payoff if the favorite is, instead of 2 to 1, like 1 to 9 or 3 to 5? Is there a better payoff on that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. And we should note that our topic is TVG programming, but in a week from now, when we come back with the Racing Roundtable, the topic will be all about exchange wagering. There's a lot of politics, too, about where it's going to be implemented, but then the player just wants to know simple questions like that as well, Stephen. What type of price can you get? Well, the market's going to dictate that.
In the end, yes, but on to answer the first part of Frank's question, we're hoping exchange wagering will come to California in the summer of 2012. There's still a lot of lifting, a lot of heavy lifting to do with the tracks, with the horsemen, with the regulator, but we think we've put a model together that hopefully we'll be able to launch, and if we do, I honestly believe it'll revolutionize the racing industry. Is it going to make it masses of money in the short term? Absolutely not. Might it do it in the long term? Probably yes, but it needs cooperation and it needs fans like Frank to be betting on it. They'll do it, in my view, because they're going to get better prices than they can get. The margins are going to be very different from the pari-mutuel, the old-fashioned pari-mutuel. This is just a modern form of pari-mutuel, fan-to-fan betting. We've seen in the UK, in Australia, and other places where we bet, tote business has gone up, as exchange wagering has gone up. And the great benefit is that people can play in both markets. If you see a horse that might be 1-9, you're not going to get 2-1 about a 1-9 shot, but you will get 1-5, you will get 1-4. For an even money shot, you're probably going to get a 3-2 or an 8-5, or you'll get whatever the market wants to give you. And if you want to be a layer, that means you allow somebody to bet with you. You decide what the right price is, and you take somebody on. And if they have a converse opinion to the one that you've got, then you'll get the price you want.
It is a topic that is generating a lot of discussion right now in thoroughbred racing. That is exchange wagering, and it will be our topic on next week's show. So if you have a question about exchange wagering, just like Frank in Washington, whatever that topic may be surrounding exchange wagering, we want to hear it. Email or send us a video link of your question to our panel of executives that we'll have on Roundtable next week. Again, Roundtable at tvg.com, airing Friday, January 27th, 5 o'clock Pacific time. The topic next week, exchange wagering. Before we go to break, we had a question come in, and it's from Red Bank, New Jersey. It says, doesn't that Tom Cassidy do a great job, Mr. Byrne? That's Mr. and Mrs. Cassidy from Red Bank, New Jersey. What do you think?
He is the find of the season. He's doing an absolutely fabulous job, except for his dress sense. Is that shirt lilac or lavender? That's what I want to know.
I think it's orchid. That's just
orchid is not a color.
It's a color.
Orchid is not a color.
We'll solve that mystery and many others.
It's a movie with Mickey Rourke. Wild Orchid.
That was a hot movie, by the way.
It was.
Can I go now?
And the topic this week is TVG programming, and our question about TVG's programming comes from the racetrack.
I'm Chris from Riverside, and I was wondering why TVG doesn't show Santa Anita races.
Familiar question, Melanie.
Yes, it is. We would love to show Saturn Anita racing, but in actuality, Saturn Anita is owned by the Stronach Group, who also owns HRTV, and at this time, Saturn Anita Racing is shown exclusively on HRTV. We've offered various deals to them, and if they would like to let TVG air their races, we would definitely welcome that opportunity.
Tony, you've been around this issue since TVG launched well over 12 years ago now. Are we any closer in 2012 to compared to where we were, say, in 1999?
It's just tough. I mean, Santa Anita is really such a sore subject because my first job in racing was at Santa Anita. I love Santa Anita racetrack, and you know, a lot of our audience is in California, and a lot of people across the country like to bet on Santa Anita races. So it's really disappointing that we don't get to show the races. But the answer to your question is, it's really hard to say where we're at, and every time I think that we're getting closer, it doesn't happen, and it seems we're even farther away by the time we're done. So I don't know if Stephen would disagree with that.
I wouldn't disagree, but in the end, it's the people at home and the race fans who lose out. You know, we've tried to put everything forward from a business proposition point of view, where effectively we don't make any money on the deal at all. We have a good distribution network on TVG. We're in 3 or 4 times the homes that HRTV are, and we'd like to get as much content out there as possible, because if there's a strong racing industry, ultimately there'll be a strong TVG. But I respect what, you know, the Stronach Group are doing. They're trying to go forward with their own business model. It's one I struggle to understand sometimes, but those guys do what they think is the right thing for their business, and we'll continue to try and do the right thing for ours. But we're here, we're willing, we'll work with anybody if we possibly can, because ultimately we want to put racing in the fan first.
As TVG account holders are aware, if we don't have television coverage of a particular racetrack, you can find them at the TVG website. And that ties into our next question. Justin emailed in, why doesn't TVG have their programming, their on-air programming, what we do day to day on television, stream live on their website? That shouldn't be too hard to do, right, Melanie?
You would think that it wouldn't, but it actually is more difficult than it appears at first blush, because this company entered into long-standing agreements under previous owners with carriers that offer our network on their cable network. So those agreements have restrictions that are placed on not only us but every other carrier, that our network is not allowed to be shown or video streamed on the internet at this point. Now, we are in the process of trying to negotiate some of those deals, and some of those agreements will expire shortly, and then we will obviously be trying to get an opportunity where we can air the network on the internet. It would be beneficial to our horse racing fans and our business model.
Just a point, if I can, I'd like to make. I mean, I came to this company a couple of years ago. I love it. I really enjoy being here. But one of the common misnomers, I think, that I hear more commonly from fans and from people in the racing industry is that, you know, TVG is this and TVG is that, and much of it is based on what TVG used to be. There's a different TVG now. We've been here for, it's almost our 3rd birthday coming up, and it's taken us a while to get around to things like programming and to start concentrating on this. But we're determined to work with the racing industry and to change the way the networks run. but a lot of people have prejudices to the company that's based on what went before. And I think TVG, I don't want to discredit the previous companies that owned it, but it was in an advantageous position, and I did think some people who owned this company previously tried to exploit their monopoly position, and they did damage to the horse racing industry. I feel a little bit like a guy who's moved into a wonderful house that everybody in the neighborhood knows there's a bunch of bodies buried beneath the patio because a serial killer used to live there before. And I can't understand why people don't want to come visit the house. You know, it's a really interesting challenge that we've got. But I think we need to just stick around, serve our time, try and build trust up, and let people see that we're not just talking the talk, but we're fundamentally going to make a difference.
Well, I think a lot of people were taken aback. Usually when topics came up concerning TVG and issues with previous parent companies before Betfair, it was no one was available at TVG for comment, or there was no comment. Betfair comes in and says, this is what we want. This is what we want to bring to America. This is what we want TVG to be. And I think there's been this litmus test for you to see if that's for real.
Yeah, and if we're real and serious and genuine, then programs like this shouldn't just be self-serving. It shouldn't just be TVG executives and TVG people who are on it. We should have people who disagree with us, who are our commercial competitors that come on here, who have a different agenda and want to articulate whatever positions that they've got. We would welcome them to participate in this. It's a live format. People can come on and within the confines of the law say anything they like. We're not afraid of constructive criticism, and we'd welcome healthy debate.
I want to go on record saying that there are no actual dead bodies on TVG. Just a lot of dead Pick 4 tickets.
Yeah,
and Todd
programming
ideas. I like to say, to the disagreement, I disagree with Tony most of the time. So
yeah, but we do have a pointed question about something that is not available through TVG anymore, and I want to get to this from Joe in North Carolina because we've received a lot of emails like this. Why was TVG free discontinued, and will it ever return?
It was discontinued because although the people who played it and used it were passionate about it, there weren't very many of them, and I think we can do a better job. I don't think that we put a lot of time, effort, and energy into nurturing it and looking after it. It was a little bit redundant. I think its functionality is pretty lame, and I hope that we'll be able to come forward.
Tell us what you really think.
Well, I think we'll be able to come forward in a few months' time with something that'll be a little bit more innovative, a little bit more imaginative, and hopefully people will want to work with us on it.
Another question that comes up when I go out to the racetrack, well, actually, it's cat calls. I could do what you do, Shrupp. And occasionally people ask, well, how do I become an announcer at TVG? And
yeah, how did you become an announcer at TVG?
Thanks a lot, Tony. For me, I worked at Calder Racecourse down in South Florida for about 7 years before coming to TVG, and I answered an ad in the Daily Racing Forum about this startup horse racing network, came out and auditioned. Fortunately, management liked me, and now I've been here going on 13 years. Well, you talked about previous management, the mistakes they made. Maybe I was their biggest mistake. But 13 years later, I'm part of a staff that I love to be around day in and day out, not just the people that I work with on air, but behind the scenes, like the people that you're meeting here on the set tonight of Racing Roundtable. So I'm very fortunate to call TVG home, and we also welcome in a lot of people. Tom Cassidy is a good example of someone who just joined our staff within the past year, and I think, well, how did we get along without him? Mike Joyce can probably best answer. How do you become an on-air person at TVG?
Well, I had a background in racing like most of us that work here do. I grew up at the racetrack. My dad was a racing executive, and my first job in racing was when I was 11, and I did every job at the racetrack until I was hired here at TVG back in 2001. So I've just been here for 10 years. And like my experience at the racetrack at TVG, I've done just about every job you could do at this network. I was hired as a production assistant for, I believe it was $20,800 a year, which is a lot of money living in Los Angeles. And amongst my many glamorous job descriptions at the time, making copies, going to the tape library and logging tape, buying Todd Trupp Hawaiian punches before the quarters would start. And from there on out, this place was the opportunities as you made it. So every time I had a chance to get, a camera in the field, whether it was going to shoot in the mornings or anytime I had a chance to do any kind of extra work, you just have to throw your hat in the ring and try and make a nuisance of yourself to management and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And for about 18 months, somewhere between 18 months and 2 years, I worked every Monday and Tuesday for free doing the shows that we used to call it a radio show in-house, but it was basically the Monday, Tuesday programming with no cameras. It was just our voices, and it was me. Rich Perloff got started the same way. And after doing that for a couple of years, I made my way from that to producing, to the research department, to doing a lot of remotes until I finally became full-time talent, probably in 2003, 2004. And everyone here at TVG wears many hats. Everyone here has to do a lot more than just what their job description is. But I believe I'm the first person to ever go from production assistant all the way to on-air talent.
And you're to be congratulated for doing that. And today was payday. I saw his check. It's now $21,800 versus the $28,000 he was making a while ago. On the subject of money, this is a topic that comes up quite a bit, and it's actually something that the industry is trying to deal with right now, and that is the subject of rebates. This comes from Bobby in Florida. It says, why not offer better rebates than wager rewards? A $5 rebate for a $2,500 bet? Too little, Bobby from Florida says. Now, there's restrictions on rebates, aren't there, from state to state, and what different entities can do?
Melanie would know that better than me, but the biggest restriction we have on rebates is the margin that we actually make off the bet itself is really low. I think we probably return more to the racing industry than any other ADW. We don't earn track content, so we just get a relatively small slice of the action. The percentage is around about 5 or 6%. It costs us about 2.5% of that, i.e. half, 2.5% to do cost of sales, marketing, keep the show on the road and all that kind of thing. Then we spend about another 2%, it's almost half again, on keeping the television network on air. And we're making less than 1% of any bet that's transacted with us. It's an irony. I mean, we'd match about, $700 million worth of bets at TVG, and people look at me with astonishment when you go back to them and say, at the end of the year, we don't end up with a profitable company as a consequence of that betting activity. And it's because we do all sorts of other things. So if and when we start offering rebates, it's money that's coming off the bottom line. We don't have the margins that the likes of Twin Spires, ExpressBet, Naira Rewards do, but we're trying to work on different programs and different relationships with tracks so that we can start to incentivize customers, because again, we want to try and do the right thing for the fan out there. I think we have a good ADW offering. I think we will have a good exchange offering, but we want a fair shake. We want to be able to offer rebates as well. So we're going to look at trying to set up things like rebate companies and tempt the people who are betting offshore back onshore, but we need a little help on our side to be able to do that.
Let's go back to the phone calls, and Joe from New York joins us now on Racing Roundtable. Joe, thanks for calling in.
Oh, thanks for taking the call. I just want to say there's no better analyst on TV. They offer great insight into the racing game. I just had a quick question. In some cases, you show a post parade as opposed to showing a live race. And I think you mentioned that, the ad revenue, you didn't generate a lot of ad revenue. In some cases, you go to commercial as well. Why wouldn't you show the live race and then show the post parade on tape?
It's a good question, and obviously every circumstance is different. In a lot of cases, if you look at, let's just use a track like Keeneland as an example, where we might choose to show a live post parade from Keeneland over a live race that's going off somewhere else. And that's because we have an exclusive arrangement with Keeneland. The only place that you can watch Keeneland's racing is on TVG. So if we choose not to show that post parade or to show that post parade a minute till post, rather than and choose instead to show a race live from another track that's airing on HRTV, that race is airing on both the networks, whereas Keeneland is only on TVG. So it's important for us to focus on that. Another thing to mention is that people do need time to watch the post parade and then make their bets. So if we show that post parade, which we've done in the past, a minute till post time, we come out of the post parade and the horses are loading in the gate, it sometimes fools the viewers and the gamblers, because we are just conditioned when we see the horses in the post parade to think that we're going to have at least 5 minutes to make our bets. So all of a sudden you're making your bet, you're looking at the post parade, they come out of the post parade, the horses are going in the gate, and it's panic mode, you're rushing to try and get your bets in, and that's the worst case scenario.
And wouldn't you say some of this is driven by what I think is, as an industry, our greatest failure, and that is to keep races apart, not running on top of each other, the scheduling issue that happens.
That's been one of the most frustrating things at TVG since I got here, is that if you watch TVG, a lot of times, like during the spring when we'll have multiple tracks that are running, or during the summer, in premier content, the top tracks in the country, you'll see 3 or 4 races in the first 12 minutes of the hour, and then it's half an hour till the next race. And it's really difficult. But as more time goes by, the tracks have become more and more willing to work with us and adjust those post times, because they're finding that not only does it help them on TVG for television coverage, but it's also going to help them in the simulcasting world to stay off of, say, a Belmont race and leave a little more time.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a big enough gut to try and run the network and the company based on gut feel, but I don't think that's going to do us a very good job. And we've worked since we came here to put a lot more analysis and data behind what we do. It might not seem like a natural answer, but we've discovered that there's an optimal number of races per hour with post parades that, on the business side, also drive betting revenue. Really, frankly, the ideal solution is for TVG to upgrade its technology and for the cabling systems in the US to do it so the fans can choose themselves to watch whatever track feed that they want to watch. It shouldn't really be us that's feeding a diet to them. In my view, we should be putting a programming package together which is of the pristine tracks. We sell racing to as big an audience as possible with post-parades analysis and replays. But if fans just want to watch Sam Houston or Parks or whatever it happens to be, they should be able to opt into that and watch those feeds directly themselves. We're a fair bit away from doing that now, but I think that's something we all should be working towards.
But I think it's important to mention that our goal is not just to show race after race after race, and we did try that. We have experimented with different formats at TVG. We're always tinkering with the programming to figure out what works best.
Customers don't like it ultimately, do they? It doesn't drive.
Well, we at one point we were showing 18 races in an hour, and the one thing that never changes is there's only 60 minutes in an hour. So by the time we'd show 18 races, what would happen is we're showing, say, a live race from a D-level track, a track that there's very little money being bet on. There's very few people in the audience that are even interested in betting on it. Us showing that race is preempting us from showing coverage from a Belmont or from a Keeneland or from a Del Mar. And what happens is people end up not getting anything that they want. So the people that want to bet the second tier, third tier tracks aren't seeing enough from that track. The people that want to bet the A-level tracks aren't seeing enough. And that's why everything's available on the website. So I always encourage people to try and use TVG.com in conjunction with the television network as they're watching and betting on the races.
And the other thing, just a brief point, sorry Melanie to cut across you, is that we also want to work with track partners to drive people to go to the track. And sometimes you have to show what the track has to offer as well, not just the post-parades, but some of the color, some of the people who are there, see behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. Just add to the magic and the allure of racing. It's not all for us just about getting the races on and trying to drive betting revenue. It's a balance.
And that's what I was going to say. And it also hurts with our relationship with our track partners. When we're negotiating for the content that our viewers want, and we're doing that by showing race after race after race, then they're not inclined to want to give us their content because they're not getting the most out of it either. So it speaks to not only the customer but the track partners as well.
We had a question about the expansion of TVG into another medium, and that is radio. This comes from John, and Tony, this is directed towards you. There doesn't seem to be consistent scheduling of TVG programming on XM radio. Why is this? Where can I find the listings?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that have Sirius XM radio, obviously it's a great product and it's a great opportunity for horse racing. It's amazing how TVG's show, because it's so conversational, works really well on radio, but it's very frustrating as a person who owns satellite radio. It's very frustrating. I work at TVG and I never know when TVG is going to be on and TVG is not going to be on. And the problem is there's only a certain amount of bandwidth on these satellite radio networks, so they can't carry us full time unless they were to dedicate a channel for us. We're hoping that changes, but I would really encourage viewers out there, if you've got satellite radio and you want TVG to be on a regular basis, to contact XM or Sirius Radio and tell them you are subscribing to their product and you do watch and listen to horse racing.
And that number's up on the screen, 866-635-2349, if you'd like to have more TVG programming as part of the lineup on XM. We go back to the phone lines here on Racing Roundtable, the subject TVG programming, and we have a question from Janice in Texas. Janice, thank you for calling in.
Hey, I have thought a lot about this. Reality TV is supposed to be, all the rage and making so much money. And we had a show at one time on Animal Planet called The Jockeys. And for me and several of my friends, we got really involved because we got to know the jockeys. So I'd like to see more about what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, that really bolsters the point about how you can't just be a network that just puts out a track feed and shows race after race after race after race, because it's doing an injustice to the industry. There's more to the sport. So will there be an expansion of programming ideas?
I think that there will, but to get to the specific question of reality television, and obviously reality programming's very costly to produce, and it's a network like Animal Planet is a network that's driven by advertising revenue, and they just have a completely different business model than TVG. The majority of our revenue comes from the wagering, and they had that show. Actually, I actually really enjoyed that show, but the show was canceled, which is kind of sad. It also shows you where horse racing is when you consider that a show called Ice Truckers or whatever.
Yeah, Ice Road Truckers.
Ice Road Truckers is still on the air and Jockeys isn't, because more people can relate to someone driving a gigantic big rig down an icy road than people riding.
Remember, we have the topic, but it's up to you where we go with that topic with your questions. And the topic on this week's show for Racing Roundtable, TVG programming. And let's go out to the track for our next question.
Patrick Zajac from Cypress, California, and I was wondering, when is TVG planning on coming out with an app for an iPhone or a Droid so I can bet from my smartphone?
Well, that's way beyond me. Stephen?
Yeah, probably me as well, except I read up earlier on what the answer should be. I mean, it's dependent on Apple, frankly. In the US, they don't allow betting applications on the iPhone. Elsewhere in the world, Betfair has a fantastic app on the iPhone, and it's used and utilized, as we have also for the Android. There is a mobile product on TVG. There's a mobile product, obviously, on all the other ADW betting products as well, where you can stream races and you can bet using your mobile. But it's going to take a little while, I think, to persuade Apple to embrace.
Yeah, but I think that people need to realize that you can, if you go to mobile.tvg.com, that's mobile.tvg.com, and then you can save it onto your Apple or your Android, your iPhone or your Apple, and it basically is essentially like, it's not a true app, but it serves as an app, and you just can click on it and get right to our mobile site, and it'll serve similar to an app, and you can stream the races on there as well.
So reassuring to have somebody technically savvy sitting on this panel, I have to say. Melanie, you look...
Compared to you, I'm technically savvy.
No, but Tony's right, and it doesn't matter what type of phone. Like, when we get an app, it may be just only an iPhone app, but with the information Tony just gave, it could be in any phone.
More ways to lose money.
Yay!
Wish they'd make an app where you can make a phone call. All right, we're going to go to the antiquated email, and this comes from Kevin, who says, does TVG management ever discuss comments posted by members of the community site? You go to tvg.com, you have the TVG community site where you can post threads on various topics. Do you guys look at that and then discuss it amongst yourselves?
I just want to go on record as saying that I really love the community members. Go ahead, Stephen.
Well, you're in a different camp from me. I think officially I should say
you've gone on there and interacted. You've posted on there.
I do. I mean, sadly, I don't have a life, so I do read all the stuff. I read all the abuse. I see it all. I see it's there. Some of it drives me nuts. To me, it's like filth and graffiti in a bus shelter. You want to take some of it seriously, but if a bunch of anonymous people aren't prepared to put their name behind something and articulate in a reasonable and rational way what their views are, I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to listen to the abuse. I don't want to read it. I would like a debate and I'd like a discussion, but not with some of the folk on there. It's interesting to me that more than half the people that post on our site, some of whom denigrate the business, denigrate racing, denigrate personalities, and actually denigrate each other, they're not even TVG customers. You know, they go on there, and I think we need to do something about that, frankly. I don't think that that's a very healthy situation to be in. The principle of a community, I love it. Of course I do. I'd like to have viewers sitting here, talking about TVG, criticizing us, complimenting us, engaging with us, and interacting with us. But some of the filth that turns up on our community site and on other blogs, I don't want to read it.
What is a bush shelter?
A bush shelter?
Stop! No, I think I want to say one thing about the community.
Okay.
It's that for me, I always really appreciate feedback, and I think there's a lot of really good constructive feedback that we get from people. And like tonight's show is a perfect example of that. But a lot of times the people in the community will have multiple accounts and they're holding a debate with themselves. So someone will post a comment and then we'll go back in under a different name and say, yeah, I totally agree with that person that just said that.
But the tone as well, it puts people off who really genuinely want to post. Real posters who've got something articulate to say. I'm sorry, Mel.
No, I agree with that, but I think your answers show that, to answer this question, that management clearly does read what's on the community site, and that's what they wanted to know. Now, what we do with it may not be what this viewer or caller is wanting to know.
Yeah, but it's not about one person. It's all about doing what's best for the entire TVG community, and that includes you out there who watch us every day and are able to be TVG account holders. And we thank you for watching this week's edition of Racing Roundtable. We want your feedback, and I have the feeling those comments that were just put out will give us a lot of feedback. Pick up the phone, call 888-722-3884 if you have a comment about tonight's show or if you have a question about next week's show. And the topic next week will be about exchange wagering. Racing Roundtable here on TVG next Friday. The topic, exchange wagering. If you don't want to pick up the phone, well, then you can go to roundtable@tvg.com. My sincere thanks to Melanie Frank, Tony Olivato, Stephen Byrne, but the biggest thanks is to you. Thank you for joining us on Racing Roundtable and making the show truly what it should be about, your concerns. All of us are great stakeholders in this fantastic sport, the world of thoroughbred racing, and Racing Roundtable wants to take up on the topics that matter most. We'll be back next week with another edition. I'm Todd Schrupp.